So we're going to get started. All right, I said the good evening part already. See, this is what happens when you have notes in front of you. So I want to welcome all of you to our second installment of Risk-Taking Women in the Arts series. This is our second program, and I am Tracy Beal. I'm the Director of Public Programming here at the Baltimore Museum of Art. And tonight we are excited to gather for an evening that celebrates the accomplishments and the vital presence of women in the arts. This fall, the museum has filled its marquee exhibition space with over 230 works by women from Europe between 1400s to 1800s. You can see samples of needlework hanging along the side of paintings by Judith Leister and Artemisia Gentileschi. In a time and place where art was largely perceived to be paintings or sculpture, and mostly the work by men, there were definitely women that were making all kinds of beautiful and extraordinary objects of beauty and value. Women made their names not just as artists, but as entrepreneurs. Women ran workshops, they created businesses, they made their own mark. It is this entrepreneurial spirit and the desire to make art and an art world for themselves that lead us to the very talented two women that are going to grace the stage today. So we are welcoming Dr. Myrtis Bedolla. She is both the proprietor and the visionary founder of Galerie Myrtis, an emerging blue-chip gallery specializing in the work created by African Americans and African diasporic artists. Bedolla's career spans over 3 decades as a gallerist, an art advisor, and a curator. In 2023, Bedolla's curatorial work and scholarly contributions earned her an honorary doctorate from the Maryland Institute College of Art. Thank you for bearing with me. She also received a governor's citation from Governor Wes Moore, underscoring her profound influence in art and culture. Dr. Bedolla is also the representative for our next guest. Her name is Tawny Chatmon. Tawny is a photography-based artist residing here in Maryland. Her journey took a transformative turn in 2010 when she began to document her father's battle with cancer, unknowingly capturing the moments leading to his untimely passing. This experience reshaped her perspective, steering her away from commercial photography and in towards pursuits of a higher vocation. Chatmon believes that life experiences and exposures shape who we are. I want to say thank you to the Deborah Buck Foundation for making this program possible. And I want to also thank all of you for joining us here today. So without further ado, I'm going to bring our guests to the stage. So Dr. Myrtis Bedolla and Tawny Chatmon can join us. Y'all should clap. Thank you both for joining us, and we have mics on. I think a good way to start this conversation is probably you both talking about your family influences and entrepreneurship, which led you to where you are today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tracy, and thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm Myrtis Bedolla, the owner and founding director of Galerie Myrtis, and I want to thank the BMA for the invitation to participate in the Risk-Taking Women in the Arts series, and I'm definitely honored to be here sharing this platform with the amazing Tawny Chatmon. So I sit before you this evening as a testament that God can dream a bigger dream than you can dream for yourself. This is not the profession that I sought after. I was going to be a CPA, but I was drawn in a very different direction, one that I am very passionate about and very honored to be a part of. And I attribute that to my grandparents, Luther C. Fuse and Martha, who lived in Aurora, Illinois. I grew up in Chicago. My grandfather was a business owner, and he provided janitorial services and delivery services to local businesses. I spent my summers working alongside him, probably from the age of maybe 10 until my teens, until I got too grown and I wanted to do my own thing. But he cleaned office buildings, movie theaters, and my favorite was a candy store. And he would buy candy for me to sell to the neighborhood children. And I would set up my stand in front of his house, and I would take a egg carton. That was my cash register. So I would cut it in half. The top was where I put the dollar bills, and the part that cradled the eggs was where I put the coins. And so that's where the bug, the entrepreneurial bug was. I was bitten by the bug. In addition to his cleaning service, he also had a delivery service. I rode in the truck or van with my grandfather on those days, and we would go to different businesses after their business hours. Then you could leave a package on the door, and I was the runner. I'd run up to the door, grab the package, and then we would take those packages to the post office. The dock in the back was open, but the postman had left for the day. So we were doing these, making our rounds and picking these things up. Something else that really left a very serious impression on me was my grandfather also, with his business, would deliver groceries to the elderly and shut-in. And those days, they would call the grocery store, the grocer would put those things together, and we would go and collect those grocery bags. And in addition to that, then the grocery stores did not sell foods with the dented cans or crushed bread or overly ripened fruit. And they would collect all of those foodstuffs, put them in boxes, and my grandfather would drive to very poor communities in Aurora and give those foods to needy families. So I learned from him the spirit of entrepreneurship, that there's dignity in work, the importance of generosity. Oh, God. I'm sorry. The importance of generosity. And to be grateful for what I have. So, Tawny, I know that your parents have played a significant role in shaping who you are as an artist, and our families mean so much to us. And perhaps you'd like to share your journey.
So hi, everybody. I'm Tawny Chatmon, like Myrtis. 10 years ago, 12, you could have never told me that I was going to be on the stage at the BMA talking about my work. It just isn't a career that I ever thought of having. I was always a creator. I thought I would have a career in dramatic arts. Growing up, most of the time, I thought I was going to have a career in dramatic arts. And then after I graduated high school, I was attending the National Conservatory of Dramatic Arts, and out of nowhere, I just quit. Not knowing what I was going to do, my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, suggested that I try my hand at photography since it was something I was already experimenting with. But this photo here, to me, it makes most sense given the time that we have that I start here, because this is a very pivotal moment in my life, and now I'm gonna get emotional. This is my dad's, one of his first appointments after being diagnosed with prostate cancer. And this is my dad, my mom, and my middle daughter. And when my dad was diagnosed, him and I decided that I would document his battle with prostate cancer. We thought it would be a beautiful story for other men to take prostate cancer seriously. Usually when prostate cancer is spoken about. It's spoken about as, oh, men usually survive it, and especially in the Black community, Black men are dying from prostate cancer. So we thought that I would capture every day, his day-to-day, and we would have this beautiful story to tell. And so my parents came to stay with me, and I helped my mom take care of my father, and what I ended up capturing was my father losing his life to prostate cancer. And I remember at that time when I was helping take care of my father that he said, the way that you're calling these trials and companies to try to get me in these trials and this medication, you should call these clients that you want. And so I was shooting commercial photography at the time, and after he passed, I wanted to make him proud, and I still did that. I went really hard trying to get these clients. And at some point, it just didn't make sense. It just felt like, what am I doing with my life? What purpose is this? Why do I want these clients? My mortality started to become very, very apparent that one day my kids would live in this world without me. And at that time, too, I started to pay attention to the world. I feel like I grew up. I was 30-something years old, 31, but I felt like I grew up without my father, losing him. And so I started to pay attention to the world. Trayvon Martin, the photo of his lifeless body still bothers me to this day. And seeing people discuss his life as if it didn't matter. Going to museums with my children and wondering what effect does this have on Black children, walking through museums and seeing all of this beautiful artwork in these beautiful gold frames, but they don't see themselves until, we've walked in there for 45 minutes and then we happen upon someone that looks like us. And I started seeing Black children sent home from schools because their hairstyles were violations of the rules. And so I spent time arguing back and forth on Facebook with people, trying to convince them of what was going on in the world. And at some point, I just started creating. And I started sharing. And then you reached out to me maybe a year after. And so I was doing commercial photography before then. I had no idea. I hadn't even looked into fine art and all of those things. And you called me in for an interview. And I went in and we talked. And I recently heard her tell a story that I had to think about it with her representing me. And I'm like, I didn't think about it. I knew immediately that I was going to sign with you. And so that leads us to the next part that we are gonna talk about, which is representation. And so the question that I have for you is, what are the gallery's criteria for selecting artists?
Yes, thank you. So part of the consideration in taking on an artist, and I'm just going to share with the audience images of artists who are represented by the gallery. So what I'm looking for is artists who have a unique voice and who are but those that are on a professional career path. I often encounter artists, mostly casually, or some who don't understand that it isn't appropriate to come to the gallery without an appointment and may show up at the door with a portfolio and want a review, or say, I made this one brilliant work of art, can you represent me? The answer to all of those is no. Because what I'm looking for are those who have demonstrated their ability to take an idea, concept, subject, and express that through a collective body of work where I can look at those, whatever the form it takes on, and the idea has been fully realized, that there's a connection, that I can draw a thread from one piece to the other, and a story is being told. I understand the narrative. I'm looking for artists who I want to know what informs their work. I want to be challenged by it. It should be thought-provoking. I'm looking for work that speaks to our humanity, that's socially, politically charged. The gallery that I have exists as a safe space where artists can show their work uncensored. It's a safe space. And that is really a challenge these days, where there, oddly enough, where we are today, that artists' works are being censored, their voices are being censored. But you can show that work in Galerie Myrtis, and I may not always agree with the idea, the concept, but I am open to understanding what the position is. Something else that I look for is artists who have done the work beyond creating it, but the research. So you have a wonderful idea, you have a wonderful concept, but has it been supported through scholarship? Who are you looking to support that? Whose writings are informing your writing? Because we also require the artist to write about their work so that it is put in proper context. It's part of their legacy. It becomes part of my legacy because it's being shown in Galerie Myrtis. So those are the types of things that I'm really interested in knowing and understanding. Sorry. Yeah.
The artists.
Well, I'll do that a little bit. I mean, I have several slides here, so I was just going to go through very quickly. Okay. So I guess part of what I also love are artists who are able to work in different mediums, which is reflected in the diverse. I'm looking for the diversity in materiality. So we have Delita Martin, who is a master printmaker. She also sews down onto her prints, and she uses various printmaking processes, decorative papers or fabrics. Fabiola Jean-Louis, who's one of the more recent artists who've joined our roster, a photographer. Also, an incredible thing about her work is that her subjects, the dresses that they wear, are created by hand from paper. And it's just amazing what she's done. Philandus Thames uses everyday materials, hair brushes, and hair beads in his attempt to challenge us through language. Jarrell Gibbs, one of our local heroes, his work centers around Black leisure, the Black family, inspired by photographs from his family's album. Lavette Ballard, her work speaks primarily to, but not solely, about the migration, Black migration. Scott Johnson is a sculptor, extraordinary career in that he has studied under one of the master sculptors who's no longer with us, Nicholas Mokumaranwa. And so he is one of the unique individuals that holds that position as an African American. Many Europeans have studied under Nicholas, but Scott is, I believe, one of only 3 African Americans that have done so, and the only one that is currently practicing. There's another local hero, Megan Lewis. She, Jarrell, and Fabiola, along with Yala Ford, are going to be part of the next exhibition that opens in the gallery, which is That Which Compels Me So.
And when is that?
That opens November 18th. Thank you. And then there's, of course, Monica Ikegwu, who this brilliant piece, which is part of my collection, was shown in the Culture Hip Hop exhibition that is now on tour, and it's going to Germany, Berlin, and Canada. So they've extended the travel schedule. We're really excited about that. Morel Doucet, ceramicist. Wow, he's a triple force. He also is a printmaker, painter, illustrator. Really talented.
Well, before you move
Yes.
on, since you were talking about the exhibition that's opening,
Yes.
Then I should ask the question, what methodologies do you employ in the process of selecting themes for the exhibitions you curate?
Yes. So a lot of that is driven by the artist. The part of the program at the gallery is that we allow for each artist to have a solo exhibition, and then there are group exhibitions. And there are times when I curate an exhibition that I'm really doing it for selfish reasons. There may be a subject or something. I always want the exhibitions to be timely. So there may be something going on in the news that I think that the artist's works speak to. So we will explore that, and I will select works from various artists so that we can explore it and think about it, contemplate it, and discuss it rather. There are times I read a lot, so sometimes the exhibitions are inspired by a book that I'm reading, and I see that the artist's works I'll select artists whose works respond to that. And just research, writing, thinking, contemplating, wanting to engage the community in conversation, and also showing the relevance that art has in cultural preservation, dispelling stereotypes, myths, racism. I think that whether you agree with the artist's position, or that what you're experiencing visually is part of your own experience, there is something to be learned there. And I believe that exposure to the work of artists who are not of our culture but of someone else's often is instrumental in dispelling those stereotypes, because it's through ignorance and fear that that's what is a lot of stereotypes and racism are rooted in ignorance, that which we don't know, we fear. So we tend to create ideas or perceptions about people when that really is not their truth.
Okay, if
Oh,
you want
okay.
to
Sorry. Okay, so I spoke about Morel. Nelson Stevens, who unfortunately is no longer with us, he was a very prominent member of AfriCobra, which is an artist collective that was established in the 60s. They were instrumental in forming the Black Arts Movement. Susan Goldman. And part of the reason I wanted Susan's art featured in this presentation is that often it's believed, because I'm a Black-owned gallery, that I only represent African American or African diasporic artists, when in fact the roster is diverse and has always been. And there are times when we have guest artists that we invite in, and there are artists that are representative of different cultures, nationalities, you name it, because this industry is still very segregated, and I have chosen not to participate in that, and so I have always made a concerted effort to support artists whose works just appeal to me for various reasons, aesthetically, or again, their narrative, what informs their work is something that I'm interested in. This is Wesley Clark. Black don't crack, but it sure catch hell. That's true. And then Yalla Ford. And now on to Tawny.
Well, don't go on to me yet.
All
because
right.
I had one more question for you.
Yes.
Can you share one of the most memorable experiences from your career that has shaped your perspective as a gallerist?
Yes. Well, certainly the opportunity to be the first African American gallerist to exhibit in Venice during the Biennale in 2022. But because family is so important, there are many other experiences that I've had that have really shaped and informed the gallery as it exists today. It started with unfortunately I did not include images of this work, but when my youngest son graduated from high school, he and I were part of a team that went to Niger. And we worked on an exhibition with the National Gallery of Niger. He was the only male in the group. And we visited 8 nomadic groups, the 8 nomadic people in Niger, the Tubus, the Hausas, the Tuaregs. Oh gosh, I can't remember them all now. But we went out on field trips, so to speak, and we researched and documented the utilitarian and ceremonial objects made by women. Ceramicists, they did leather work. It was surreal. When I look at those photographs, it still seems like it was like scenes out of National Geographics. We slept in the desert, in Inca Khan, near the Algerian border, in the sand, with the Tuareg people. I mean, it was incredible. So that shaped the gallery experience. My middle son, Noel, who works for me now, that is so important to me. And that is now also part of my legacy. In addition to that, he has started his own art handling business. And then the experiences of my husband and I in South Africa, Zimbabwe, Niger, Senegal, Maui, not Maui, yes, Mali, I'm sorry, Cuba. All of this was part of the art experiences that we've had. So the arts have enriched my life in ways that I could have never imagined. And so those are the greatest experiences for me, the ones that I've been able to share with my family. I bring those experiences back, and they make me more sensitive to the plight of others. They make me more committed to making certain that the gallery is vital and that it will be sustained, because there's so much work that needs to be done, and I understand the importance of art having its role in that. Thank you.
So now we're moving on to...
Now my questions to you, I guess. So part of what we were touched on just a moment ago was the way in which artists are brought into the fold, so to speak, the experience of the criteria for selecting artists, and part of that is also a conversation that takes place between the two. And so we agreed to share our experience when we first met, and that came about because a former assistant of mine discovered your work on social media. I don't do any social media. If it weren't for Kai Vassar, you all would not know we exist. I'm gonna point her out. Raise your hand, Kai. She's the marketing gallery manager. She is awesome. So, but prior to Kai coming aboard was Khadija Adele. And she was like, Myrtis, you've got to take a look at this woman's work. And I fell in love with it immediately. And fortunately, you lived nearby, and we met. So we talked about, during that meeting, why your work was important, why creating art is important to you. And would you like to share that? Because we want to go into, the purpose. Yes.
So I think that was around 2000. Did we figure out 2016, I think?
I think so.
Okay.
It seems longer.
It does.
But it's because it's been so great.
It does. And before we move on, I want to say that she is one of the best people that I know.
Thank you.
And I don't know where she got that from, that I needed to take a second to think about it, because like I said, I knew immediately. I had heard other stories from other artists about pressure, and that is the one thing that I never receive from Myrtis. It's always, my family is first. I am a mother of 3 children, and that is, she has known that since the beginning and has always said, she understands that and has never put pressure on me to produce, and I really love that so much about you. Yeah, so I just wanted to
Yeah, I have my saying, if you sacrifice your children, you will not succeed. And so I always give over to the fact that family is the most important. Mm-hmm. That is what sustains us. Mm-hmm. And if we are sacrificing them, then your work would not be as beautiful as it is. Yeah. The expression would not be as as impactful. Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to love on those babies so that you can use them in your art.
So we can start with the process. Yes. And my use of gold. I started using gold in 2015, 2016, and originally I was just adorning the crowns of the girl's head with golden crowns with 24 karat gold leaf, and kind of just embellishing their bracelets a little. And then I thought about Gustav Klimt's work and the feeling his work brought about in me when I first saw it. I just thought I had feelings of regality and beauty and importance looking at the work. And so I wanted to create work where the viewer would have that same feeling when they were looking at my work. And so I started to use 24 karat gold leaf in a bigger way. And also Byzantine art, the work further expanded into Byzantine art being an influence, the elongation of the form. And when you learn more about the history of gold, you learn that historically gold was reserved for those of importance. You know that when you look at something that's gold, or something that's adorned in gold, you are to look at it as it's important, as it's precious. And that is what I wanted the viewer of my work, and that's how I wanted the viewer of my work to look at the sitters of my work. And so, because the work is photography-based, I start off with a portrait sitting. This is not one of my children, but 90% of the time, my sitters are my children, my nieces, my nephews, my godchildren. My middle daughter, who is over here, she's not going to raise her hand because she doesn't want to be in the spotlight, but she will say yes every time I ask her if she will sit for me. My son, who is 19 now, he's now kind of gotten back into it where he says yes. And then my middle daughter, her work, a piece that I created of her was acquired by the Minneapolis Institute of Art. So she says that she can't be too famous anymore, so she rarely sits. She rarely sits for me. So the work starts off as photographs, and I digitally enhance the work by elongating the forms, by amplifying the hair of my sitters, in response to those policies that are in place, deeming our hair as unkempt or unacceptable for the workplace or school. And so after refining and getting the work printed, I will begin to embellish with 24 karat gold, acrylic paint, semi-precious stones, glass, and paper. And so here is a small process video of a piece that I recently completed. This is from my series, Iconography, and I was really kind of pushed into this direction after going and being included in the Venice Biennale, and learning more about iconography and Byzantine art and religious icons. The iconographers of the past, it was believed that their hands were divinely guided while they were creating. And while you were to look at those works as sacred, I am saying the same thing about my sitters. They are sacred. Mine are not to be worshipped, but in the same breath, they are sacred, they are divine, they are beautiful. And so the framing is also a very much a part of the work as the work itself. I frame my work in found antique gold frames. And after the pandemic, well, during the pandemic, I was unable to go out and source for these frames. So I now work with a frame builder who builds my frames for me.
Tawny, before you move on, maybe you'd like to share a story of a frame that you attempted to purchase, but the woman, when you showed up, didn't want that to happen.
Yeah. And she's gonna be real mad when she sees what I put inside. So there was this huge, beautiful Venetian frame that I saw on Facebook Marketplace, and my sister agreed to drive to South Carolina with me to pick it up. I arranged via messaging that I was coming this day, this time, told her I was on my way, rented a truck, and I also arranged to purchase other frames on the way there as well. And so when we arrived, my sister goes and knocks on the door, and she comes back and she said she's not selling it. I said, who said they're not selling what? And she said she's not selling the frame. I said, she's gonna sell this frame today. I drove all the way down here, she's selling the frame. So I go in, and she looks at me, she says, no, I'm not selling it. I decided I'm not selling it anymore. And I said, but I've been talking to you online. And she says, no, you weren't talking to me, you were talking to my daughter. You know, I can't remember the amount, $8,000 for this, you know. And I said, well, we agreed on this price and this is what we're going to sell it for today. I'm explaining to her, I drove down here. She was adamant that she wasn't selling it, and she finally says, well, you can't pay me with a credit card. Or you're gonna have to wait for it to go through. I said, I'll do you one better and I'll pay you in cash, but I'm leaving with this frame. So I bought the frame, and then I gave her cash. She then started being nice, but also recommended that I go to, what's that woman? The chef in South Carolina that was fired? Paula Deen. She says, have you ever heard of Paula Deen? And I pretended I didn't. I know why she was fired. And she says, you should go to her restaurant. It's right around the corner. You know, and I just was like, no, thank you, I'm good. I say that to say, and it's a huge frame. It's like a 7-foot frame. Once I finish the piece that's going in there, I'm going to send it to her. And she's going to be really upset about what goes inside. And so I've also had other sellers that have Googled me. I'm not sure why. They kind of want to know why I'm driving all this way to get the frames. And so they've Googled me, and one gentleman said that he's so happy to know that my work is going to go in this frame because it used to hang on his family's plantation. And so those are kind of the experiences that I have with the frames. Sometimes they come with art inside. And so it's also, you know, I'm removing these works and I'm repositioning our bodies in these frames. So the frames are as much a part of the work as the work itself. And Myrtis knows, I will say, you know, if someone asks, can they remove the work from the frame? I'll say, no, thank you. I will wait for someone to acquire the piece that will keep them inside this frame.
Those conversations about how important the frame is in the entire narrative, that it is purposeful. There's an intention behind why the photographs are placed within those frames. And we also have talked about the experience you had where this woman inherited this land and home, and I think it also may be frames that came from a plantation. Mm-hmm. And she didn't want to keep the family portraits that were in them. And we were talking about, we don't have the luxury of that our family's history hasn't been preserved in that way. And she saw no value in keeping the portraits, and just gave them to you along with the frames.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were two paintings. I showed you. One was his wife before he died, and if you lift that painting up, it's his ex-wife that he had painted over. So there are all these stories that come with these frames, and I just love repurposing them and giving them new meaning. Mm-hmm. And so this is the work upon completion and in one of the custom-built frames.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about our legacy, but that's your video.
Oh yes, this is the solo exhibition at the gallery.
So this is footage from Tawny's solo exhibition that took place in 2021. The title was, "If I'm No Longer Here, I Wanted You to Know." And it was really sort of a sonnet, a love song to her children. And she wrote these beautiful letters to them. And as she said, it's not only for her children, but primarily, but to all children and to Black children. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, I didn't see it. But would you like to share a little bit more about the exhibition?
These, and when you were speaking about when you're curating exhibitions, you like for them to go with the times. Mm-hmm. And so these works were created during the pandemic. And so it's titled, "If I'm No Longer Here, I Wanted You to Know," because, again, during that time, my mortality came into play again. I was seeing on the news all of these people being carried out of their homes in body bags and all of those things. And so I started to wonder, what does that feel like for someone to be here today and then be gone tomorrow and you weren't even expecting it? It was a really crazy time. And so I just wanted to make sure that I said everything that I wanted to say to my children, to Black children, to the Black community, and to the world with the letters that I wrote and with the work that I created. And so this is my son. So the piece prior was my middle daughter, but this is my son. And this piece is titled "In Your Hoodie or Your White Tee." It's a dedication to Trayvon Martin as well, and Black boys who wear hoodies, who are looked at as if they're up to something or up to trouble. And so I wanted to create something that would cause the viewer to look at the hoodie a little different than usual. And this is my daughter, the children too helped us grow. She is my youngest daughter, but she has told me from a very young age that she chose me to be her mother. And she teaches me, my children teach me so much. In this piece, she has a scar on her lip, and she told me that if I'm gonna remove that I can't use her. And so she teaches me all of these things, so that's where this title comes into play. And this is myself, my mom, my daughters, and my husband, and my youngest daughter, who is in the front, is seeing herself hanging on the walls at the Minneapolis Institute of Art beside Sheila's work, who was a protege of Klimt. So that was kind of just an amazing experience, and it circled us around to the first conversation that I had with you when you asked me what I wanted my work to do. And I wanted my work to be hanging on the walls of museums, not in a special place in the museum, but amidst the works of the master artists of the past. And so that was a beautiful dream realized here.
Yeah. Those conversations with the artists are so important in understanding their goals, so that if that is clear, then that's something that we can work towards. If they're unattainable, and I've had artists say, well, I just want to be rich and I want to be famous, and I say, well, this is not the gallery for you, because fame is fleeting, and there's a lot of things that you can do to become rich. So if you don't have attainable goals, if the work isn't relevant beyond just the commerce, then I probably can't help you. I don't know that I can meet that expectation. And those are real conversations. Kai knows. She said, amen. She's been a part of that. So we played good cop, bad cop. I'll go, I say, okay, Kai, you write the email. So this is, these are installation shots from our Venice exhibition. The title was The Afrofuturist Manifesto, Blackness Reimagined. It featured the works of 8 African-American artists represented by the gallery. And it was an award-winning exhibition. Where's Jean Thompson? Jean was a consultant, my godson, on this. Thank you, Jean. And it was in a beautiful palazzo in Italy. So it's just an incredible experience. Monica, the work of Monica Ikegwu. And Valandis Thames, the brushes in the center, and then this beaded sheet, curtain rather, which he uses the binary code in order to space those beads such that it spells a word. He's our Yale grad, so he's like otherworldly with his thinking. And so here's my tribe. So those are my 3 sons, 2 of whom are in the audience. I know I'm not going to get anybody to raise their hand. There's Christopher. Noelito, raise your hand. My niece Janelle, my granddaughter Pilala, Santana, and then my hubby up front here, Alejandro. So this was taken by a Baltimore photographer, and it was just a really wonderful occasion for us to all come together. The gentleman on your right is my oldest son, Oscar, who resides in Chicago now with his wife and my 2 little grandbabies, 2 grandsons. So this portion, we're talking about our legacy, so this is certainly part of my legacy. Kai is part of my legacy. Everyone who's walked through the doors of Galerie Myrtis, the artists, the interns, the managers and assistants, have all played an important role in the success of the gallery, how it exists today, how it's been shaped, formed, and evolved over the years. And I'm very grateful. I'm grateful to Alex, who has supported my dream for 30 plus years. There were days we were struggling. I'm like, look at that bank account balance. I need to get a job. But, you know, he was like, I got your back. So we have persevered, and the gallery is doing really well. I feel very humbled and very privileged to have had the honor to represent Tawny and many other artists like Amy Sherrill, whose career we helped launch. And there's just so many other incredible artists who we've had the experience of working with. Artists come and go, managers come and go, but we are here. You know, Galerie Myrtis may be the place that you come, but not where you're cemented. So we always support those who have moved on and embrace those who we have the privilege of now working with. So I think at this point, we will open the floor for a Q&A, and Tracy is going to moderate that discussion.
Is there anyone that has questions? You heard all of this, you have no question? Oh wait, I saw a hand over here. You had your hand up? Malika, you can give her the mic. Down front. Can you keep your hand up? And Malika's coming behind you. Anybody else?
Check.
Got you. We got 3 more.
Hi, I'm Pearlie Maccabee, Tawny's mom. As you know, I love your work. It's beautiful, amazing. But I wanted to ask you, will you be showing your work here sometime soon?
Good.
Don't look at me.
Okay. Well, that's a good question. I don't know how to
It's a
answer it. Yes, the answer is yes. I believe in, yes, I'm going to say yes. At some point, one can only hope. But I tell her that she tells me everything I create is beautiful. I will hate it. And she's like, oh, my God, it's so beautiful. I'm like, I don't trust you anymore. She can't be trusted.
But I am excited to announce that Tawny is having a solo exhibition at the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington, D.C.
Hey.
in 2025. So yeah, so that's going to be really exciting.
I think we have one other question
Great.
here.
Oh, and one here too.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Sydney, and I'm a student at the Baltimore School for the Arts as a film student. And I want to say I think your guys' work and your efforts are really amazing, and they're very inspiring. So I guess I have a quick photography question.
Okay.
I know I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to study art in like a school setting, but sometimes, you know, you have 20 photos due in 2 days, and you're like, I just gotta get them done. I just gotta get them done. But what would your advice be? Because I want to make sure that I'm not just taking photos that are like good, maybe have some of a story, but how do I create photography that's, you know, true to myself and the stories I want to tell?
I can tell you that nothing felt better than when I was photographing people and themes that meant something to me. Anytime that I forced myself to just do it because I needed to make money, and you do need to make money at first, you know, but I would say just stick to themes and focus on things that matter to you. A quote that I love, and it's attributed to Aristotle, it says, where the needs of the world and your talents meet, therein lies your vocation. So I would, if I were you, find the needs of the world that are important to you and focus on that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Langley, and I just wanted to thank you both so much for sharing all that you have. And it's very clear that the strong familial ties, the history, the legacy, kind of, also the fluidity of the arts, and being able to pivot and entertain things that you thought were once something of interest and then pivot, to something else. If budget was no object and time was not constrained, what would be your next step?
That's a great question. I think for me, what I've been contemplating a lot is opening another space. Have put a little bit of energy, but not fully into it, but looking at possibly Chicago. I would like to have a larger space in Baltimore. Would love to be able to have a space where I could have larger exhibitions, scale up more in terms of staff, because the talent pool is so big, but we just don't have the capacity to take on as many artists as we would like. We have turned away, regretfully, so many talented artists, but we are fortunate in that we are extremely busy. Tawny and the other artists just keep us on our toes, involved in major exhibitions. We're publishing catalogs. There's Louis, our designer. And so, people walk by, and my son Noel can attest to that we are extremely busy. So if money were no object, those would be the things on my wish list. Or those are the things on my wish list. Thank you.
I think I love this question because it gives me the opportunity to say this out loud, and I believe in the power of our tongue and from my mouth to God's ears. I would have a old cathedral, and I would turn it into a museum where Black children and all children and families can come and view a museum filled with work like mine for children in the world to see.
That's beautiful.
Hi, thank you, Myrtis and Tawny, so much for gracing the stage and sharing a part of your story with us today. My question to Tawny would be, well, two actually. There's two small ones. One would be when you're working, you mentioned that you work on paper and your approach seems very tactile, so I'm curious how you combat, I know it probably gets heavy very quickly, the more things you embellish or layer or add to the work. How do you combat the weight of something so large and potentially heavy? And then also, oh wow, I'm forgetting the second one, so that one's cool.
So I'll answer the first one, and that's such a good question because when I was first working, when I first started doing this work, the paper would buckle, and I would come across those. And so the framer that I work with and we now mount the work in advance. So it's mounted on a board, and then I begin to paint and embellish on it.
Awesome. I remember the second one. It was, so I know you referenced the Byzantine Empire as an influence in your work. I was wondering why you decided to elongate the figure as kind of like an aesthetic trademark of what you do.
Because artists of the past, they wanted you to have a spiritual experience when you viewed the work. And so that came with the elongation of form, where you're not necessarily looking at just a person, you're looking at a spiritual being. And also the jewel tones and the adornment of figure and all of those things. But for the most part, it's for the viewer to have a spiritual experience, for them to look at the work and not just walk by. To also, when someone is having a spiritual experience or an experience with your work, it draws them in, and then they look at the tag, and then I wanted the viewer to look beyond the gold, look beyond the beauty of the children, and find out what I'm saying in my work, and to also look into the policies and to speak out about those too. So the elongation of the form is so that the viewer will have a spiritual experience when they view the work.
I think we had one more question down below and then one here. Is it good? Oh.
I would like to bounce off your question as far as the use of medium. So you mentioned that you used a variety of mediums, aside from the gold, because you spoke about the significance of the gold. But how did you identify using these mediums collectively? And are there any other mediums that you intend to use in the future?
Identified to use them. I think the iconographers use these mediums as well, the gold, the jewels, and that's kind of how it all came together. And is there any other medium that I intend to use? I don't think so, not that I can think of. I've thought at this point so the tiles that you saw here, so the tiny tiles that you see are cut pieces of paper. And so because I'm working in photography, if I get paint on my subject's face or somewhere that I just cannot build upon it, I have to push that work aside and start over. And so I began to get this big pile of work that I didn't know what I was going to do with. And so I had spent hours, months on some of the pieces and lots of money. And so I would rip them and my mom would be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I can't use it." It would be frustrating. But then I decided that I was going to cut them into these tiny tiles, and those are the tiles that you see in the work. So I had thought about using tiles, but I'm using paper because it's just allows me to repurpose and give my old work a new meaning.
I think that was our last question for the evening. Is there anybody else? Did I miss someone? This is our last question for the evening.
So first, I just want to start by saying I was first introduced to your work at the Banneker Douglas Museum, and it was an amazing moment. I wrote them an email and thanked them for the experience afterwards, and that's how I got introduced to this talk today. So I just want to say I truly value and appreciate the work that both of you are doing in providing access to art and these experiences, which are so critical for all of us. So my question for both of you, and I didn't want to forget it, is can you provide any tips or strategies for artists who want to address socially and politically charged themes in their work, and including any backlash or how to work emotionally through it? I am the mother of a 19-year-old artist, so it's always top of mind for me. Thank you.
Whew. It's hard for me to say what I'm gonna say because I think I can say it because I have support. And, when I was going through what I was going through with Trayvon Martin, and I'm really there right now too, for other reasons. But when I was going through what I was going through with the children being sent home because of their hair, I really didn't care what anybody was going to say to me I just wanted to create something to express that frustration and anger that I was feeling, and I felt that what I was saying, people weren't listening to. And so what people can see and what stays with them, to me, was more, it worked better to get my message across. But I want to say just do it, but I don't know if that's coming from a place where I had the support to say just do it. But for your own soul and yourself, I would say stay true to what you want to say, the issues that you want to address, and create those works, because the people that need to hear it are going to listen and they're going to come. And the people that aren't ready for their message, then I don't know what to say about them, but there are people that want to hear, and there are changes that you can make by creating that work.
Yeah, I think my advice would be, the art can be very cathartic, and sometimes it becomes this creative outlet for our angst, our fears, expressing that which concerns us. There are times when people will understand it clearly and support that position, and then there are times when people will be opposed to it. I mean, if you can believe that Tawny has had pushback from people about her work. Like, why are you taking a political position? That child should not be going to school with their hair like that.
Yeah.
And also what we've faced together is, I'm an independent curator outside of the gallery, so there have been times when, like the Banneker Douglas, I curated that exhibition, co-curated her solo exhibition. Well, I don't want to say the place, but anyway, the conversation we had was, or the attempt, and I think we were very successful in making the folks understand that beyond the beauty, because they saw the beauty in the work, but there were social and political statements that were being made. Why the hair was exaggerated, what Tawny was trying to do to help validate the existence of a Black child, what she was saying to Black families through her work, was being totally lost on people whose experience were not experiencing what she was experiencing and what we are experiencing as a community. But they were open and receptive to that understanding. It took a while, but we were standing firmly, as we always do, arm in arm, because she has always made it clear what her intention is, what the purpose of her creations are, what she wants them to do in the world, how she wants them to be seen and understood. And that's what I say to your child. What is its purpose? What do you want to say? What is your narrative? What troubles you? What informs you? What's keeping you up at night? Lay that down on that canvas or whatever art form that there is, and put it out into the world and have conversations with people about it so that you can help them understand what's troubling you. And the response and the validation of it may come from the outside or not, but at least you found an outlet for that, which can be very healthy and therapeutic for our existence so that we can live in this peaceful state of being.
And Tracy, don't kill me, because I want to also add to that. Do you remember when we were in Miami and this gentleman came over and he says, I want to learn more about your work. And I start telling him about my work. Oh, the eyes are George Stinney's, the youngest child to be executed, and he was a Black boy. He was wrongly, he cuts me off and he's like, oh, your work was beautiful, but now you got too deep. And I will just literally say, then the work is not for you. Like, if you don't want to learn what the work is about, then it's not for you. So I would say, do the work that's, or did you say this was for you or your son?
It's my daughter.
Oh, your
Daughter, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
I would say whatever she wants to say, that she should say it.
Thank you so much for that.
Myrtis and Tawny, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you so much for being so candid and so open with the audience. We really appreciate your presence. We really appreciate your words. And I think this was a conversation that definitely needed to be had and had in front of an audience of people. For those of us that are joining this evening, thank you for joining us. And please stick around. There is a reception in Fox Court once you leave out of these doors over here. For those of you who have time tickets for the exhibition Making Her Mark, the exhibition will be open for about another hour or so. But once again, thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a good night.